Welcome to Actual People, a podcast hosted by me, Chauncey Zalkin, dedicated to meaningful conversations about the evolving landscape of our lives and the power of our own creativity and imagination to make magic. Welcome back to Actual People. This is my episode to reflect on men. As somebody who is a single mom of only daughters who was raised in a household of only women, with my father in the picture, but down the road in more ways than one. There have been so many articles about men and boys in crisis that you cannot swing a cat. And yes, I double checked to make sure that was actually the phrase because it sounds so violent. But if you had a cat and you were so inclined to swing it, you could not do so without hitting some article about how boys and men are in crisis. And then add to that, there is the new show on Netflix, which is a work of absolute brilliance called Adolescence. I also, on my walk around a lake, I listened to a Wall Street Journal article about women rethinking marriage, and it is chock full of statistics, which I was going to start to read, but then realized it would be very dry to read them all. I recommend taking a look at it, but you probably have already read an article just like it, talking about how women are more educated than men, that women are going boy sober or deciding to have children on their own or abstaining from dating. And then on the boys' side of the equation, you have incels, you have Andrew Tate and his absolutely repulsive rhetoric of hate towards women, which take away all of the anger towards this horrific person. It's a cry for help to have built up this entire mirage about half of the population, more than half the population, being the cause for all his ills and something to control, manipulate, and destroy. That must have come from some super deep level of pain. Hurt people hurt people. And he is such a good example of that. That is not an excuse for Andrew Tate, who has had probably the single worst influence on boys of the last decade. But that is what this is coming from. And he is just the poster boy for it. This men and boys feeling really helpless, hopeless, lost and meandering and clinging to whatever that they can for a sense of belonging. We are all driven by that need for belonging and community and connection, every single one of us. And I think women also want that same connection, but are finding men to be lacking, and men are finding themselves to be lacking because those traditional roles for men and boys have all but disappeared. You might have the trad wife, you might have the alt-right, you might have Donald Trump and his other big baby cronies controlling and trying to destroy America in the same sort of way Andrew Tate tries to destroy women, but it is not a show of strength, and they will never be able to shove the genie back into the bottle of women's roles as being submissive and malleable by men. It's just not going to happen. We are in a different world than we were 30, 40 years ago. A different world than the world that I grew up in. So I thought it would be interesting for me to kind of catalog my views on boys and men and how they have changed over the years now that I am the ripe age of 52. And I will start by talking about my childhood. I was boy crazy, absolutely boy crazy. And I noticed with my kids, boys don't figure into a lot of their conversations. They play with boys. My daughter Sky is very physical and athletic and loves to play ball in the cul-de-sac every day. She likes to play. And she's on a baseball team. She's one of two girls on the baseball team. And she does not blink an eye that there's mostly boys on this team. She doesn't want to play softball. She wants to play baseball, and that's that. And she's never had a crush. She's 11 years old. And my other daughter, she's had a couple crushes, but her obsession is drawing and becoming better at drawing eyes in particular. She draws manga and she draws realistic drawings, and she's become better and better. And that is her obsession, getting up in the morning, sitting at her desk and drawing. They center themselves in the conversation of their lives, basically. And I really admire them for that. It's just a different generation. They just don't think the same way. They are not being bombarded by images of the man just going to rescue the girl and then she's going to live happily ever. They've never had those messages. Sometimes we watch retro television and we marvel at how different and strange it is. It's a distanced viewing of those kinds of images of women as being at the mercy of men. But when I was young, I was boy crazy. Throughout my childhood, I had some pretty intense crushes. I kept a journal of some boy. He wore this and he said this to me, and what could it mean? Conversations with friends would center around that. My kids haven't hit middle school yet, but from what I'm reading, far fewer teenagers are having sex. They're more interested in their relationships with their friends. If I could go back to high school to my younger self, I would have told myself, do not have that 4-year relationship with that guy that cried every time you tried to break up with him, so that you went to college with a 8 by 10 glossy. I'm not kidding. The guy gave me an 8 by 10 glossy picture of him in a frame as my going away present to go to college. And he, I mean, it's worse than that. He gave me a clock. It was in neon. It had our names. Richard loves Chauncey. It was like the ugliest thing you'd get at the mall. Actually, I put that into storage. I did not show that to anyone. And same with the picture. The picture was not out there. But just to let you know, this guy was trying to control me. And meanwhile, he was sleeping with other girls. Of course he was. But I did not know that. And I remember a couple of times, and I still think about this one guy over the summer in Miami. Absolutely gorgeous. He was stunning and he had this big crush on me. And I was like, no, I cannot pursue this because my boyfriend is in Spain right now and I'm going to be loyal to him, even though I'd broken up with him. I'd broken up with a guy. So I would tell my younger self, oh my God, if I had just had fun and didn't have the drama of intense romantic connections, I probably would have been better off, at least for a part of those years if I had not had a boyfriend. Of course, there was a lot of excitement, but I think it's much healthier to not be focused on one boy in your early years, especially when you don't have the defenses or maturity to understand when it's not healthy. So that's that. I was boy crazy when I was younger. And then I went through a period of disillusionment. I had my heart broken several times. I had unrequited love. Thought I was going to marry a guy that I was dating when I was 30. He thought I was cool and exciting. And I was dating him because he was kind of boring and normal. And I thought that I could slow down and be less exciting, I guess, so I could have babies. The biological imperative was knocking on my door and saying, hey, you want to settle down? So this cute and sweet, but ultimately deceptive and boring guy was what I was aiming for. So I was disillusioned at a certain point, and it took me a lot to get to the place where I could be okay with being in my 30s and not having a husband. I felt really at the mercy of this clock that I had to have a husband in order to be okay or normal. And once I went over the hump of 34, 35, I remember sitting in a cafe in Paris and I was journaling and I was like, what do I want to do if I go back to the States or if I finish writing this book? What's the ultimate of how I see my life? And I could not picture the man. That wasn't part of it. And it was just natural. It was no more like, oh, I'm going to meet this wonderful, maybe because I'd given up because I was protecting my heart because it wasn't happening. That could be it. But either way, I just didn't have that in my dream plan. I did meet somebody and I did get married and I did have babies and I did get divorced. And then I did kind of go backwards out of the trauma of divorce and met somebody back to that old paradigm of like, oh, I can get saved by this relationship and find a new grounding with this man. And I think that was the final nail in the coffin that broke this illusion that romantic love is the answer to all of the ills of our mortality or the fact that we can never have complete stability in life. There was this idea that the man was going to fulfill me. It just sort of shattered. The only thing alarming is that I don't want a man particularly. I've been on the dating sites. It's made me less interested in men. I just look at that and go like, absolutely no. I absolutely don't want any of these people. I still like the idea of it, but it's very muted, very faded now. So I was nodding my head along with this Wall Street Journal article because they're talking about women being over it. I'm not 29 years old. Some people in this article were very young and giving up. Obviously, there's a lot of people who met online and married, but as online dating progressed and became algorithmically driven, it has been an absolute failure. And social media and technology and the distance that technology has brought to our lives has made this huge rift between men and women. And I'm just freestyling right now. Do you guys remember the Man Show with Jimmy Kimmel and Adam Carolla? And then later Joe Rogan replaced one of them. That's interesting that he was once on a show called The Man Show, and he's still this master of ceremonies of this ongoing bro show that got Donald Trump elected, playing on these insecurities of men instead of empowering boys and men. They should be empowered with this newfound power they have, which is emotional dimension. We have released men have released themselves from this binary of having to club a lion and drag it back to the home turf or having to save the damsel in distress. No, you don't have to do that anymore. We love those masculine qualities, but you can be multidimensional now. Why can't men find a way to connect with deeper parts of themselves? This is the thing. Men relied on power and control over women for so many years, born into it. And now they don't know what kind of identity to assume now that they don't have this role where they are the fucking hero. They're not the fucking hero. In fact, if anything, they have been demonized and villainized and made to look like a big joke. And it's not good. So why should we care? Why should we care that these boys and men are in crisis? They have been in power and been running the world for so long. Why do we care so much about boys and men? Let them suffer. We've suffered too. We've suffered long enough under the dominion of men. Let's, stomp out the patriarchy and da, 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 which obviously none of that's working right now. Boys and men now are saying, you want to stomp out the patriarchy? Hold my beer. We're going to get Donald Trump in office, the biggest misogynist, fascists, toxic men that you could ever possibly imagine. Even though we're in the death throes of the patriarchy, we're going to just push forward with all our might and be the worst of men when they had a choice, and they still have a choice to be the best of themselves. And I don't think we should vilify all men because of this toxicity where men are moving to the right. I think we should worry about them because we are one organism, one body. If one part of it is wounded or stagnating or in pain, then the rest of the organs start to follow suit and everything deteriorates. So we have to care about the whole living organism of society and humanity as one thing. It's really important that we care about the fact that being a man has been very, very difficult as well. They've had so much on their shoulders that they can now slough off, and men and women can develop a different kind of union. I don't know if you're watching White Lotus, but you see this very wealthy father dealing with this crushing depression and anxiety because of the fact that he's about to lose his role as the source of safety and security for his family. There is no wiggle room for men in that role to be vulnerable, to fail, to be fragile. I think all these years of men being responsible for asking women out, for being the one to propose, for being expected to be physically strong, to fix everything, to save their family from the apex predator, even though we don't come across them that often, I think men should rebel against that and see themselves as multidimensional people, not inherent the violence and anger that's passed down to them as the singular reaction to stress. I remember having a boyfriend when I was 25 years old. His only emotion was either showing love to me or anger. He didn't have any other emotional mode. Anger was how he expressed missing me. Anger is how he expressed insecurity. Anger is how he expressed jealousy. It was always that one number on the dial. It's wonderful as a man to embrace masculinity and all the positive things about masculinity. And I think it's wonderful for women to embrace all the wonderful things about femininity and incorporate the yin and yang in themselves as well. We have more freedom to show up differently in the world. And so why are we not doing it? Women seem to be doing it, but men seem to be doubling down out of fear into this very small space. Not all men, but there is that movement and it is very loud. In 2025, it's safe to say that women, by and large, have learned their worth. The illusion that I grew up with, that a man is going to ride in on a white horse and rescue me, is not the solution. The world I grew up in, you wanted to land a man. I don't care how you slice it. That was the reality. We had the rules. We had how to marry a man. I used to bathe myself in women's magazines because I worked in them and I loved fashion. So I was always bombarded by these cover lines. I thought when we got online, we had rid ourselves of this top-down way of talking to women and realized that we just invented a different monster. But that's beside the point. Here are some of the cover lines. How to Hold a Man by Giving Him His Freedom, Cosmopolitan Magazine, 1993. Guys, watch them, meet them, schmooze them, snag them. 17 Magazine, 1999. Quiz. What do guys think of you? Also 17, 1994, and it had Mariah Carey on the cover. And here's this particularly cringy one, The Sensuous Professor. What's behind his magnetic appeal? Glamour magazine, 1980, with Brooke Shields on the cover. That sensuous professor now we would know is a predator, not a sensuous anything. And then there was Maxim magazine, which was basically like Andrew Tate, but in print. And it's still in print, but I don't know who reads it. I remember guys had like a Maxim magazine on their coffee table. Not every guy, but like some of the douchey guys that I knew. It had cover lines like, Maximize Your Mate, Hot Babe Management Tips, June 1997, and Naked in 60 Seconds, High Octane Pickup Tricks from the Girls Who Fell for Him, 2003. And then, of course, there were the top 90s relationship book titles, which included Why Hasn't He Called? Finding a Husband at 35, He's Just Not That Into You, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, and of course, The Rules. I held men on this pedestal. I used to really want to live in Vermont. I went to college there. I always expected to go back there. I just love Vermont. But the idea of living in a rural area without a partner was terrifying. It still is terrifying because I thought, how can I do that? So I had to get the man in order to get him to move to Vermont because I couldn't do it on my own. This image that I had was he would be chopping the wood and I would be, oh my God, I sound like a trad wife. This image was that he would be able to help protect the home and we would work together, not like a trad wife. I'm way too spicy for that. But I did think that I needed to have that partnership. And now, even though it sounds kind of sounds great, but it doesn't even sound as great as it used to sound because I know better. And you cannot go backwards on those things. Just like women in general, we know better. So what else can men, I implore you, what else can you bring? Can you go back to those fundamental, wonderful things about you being a man without the control, oppression, toxicity, negativity, and relinquish some of those responsibilities that were always a fallacy? There's such a different possible way to go forward. And I think for all the moms that are raising boys, you really need to make sure that you're not raising entitled boys, but you're also raising boys that have self-esteem and self-love and know how to connect emotionally and also still be themselves. Find a way to be themselves and understand who they are as people. Because that's what us as women want. We want a man who knows who he is as a person and can bring his whole self into that relationship with confidence and a sense of peace. I want to bring up Eric Fromm. He's a German social psychologist and psychoanalyst. He wrote a book called Escape from Freedom, which I read in college years ago, riding the MTA into Grand Central. I was like 19 years old reading this book, and it sparked a panic attack because the premise was that people don't want to be free, that they do things to confine themselves because they cannot tolerate freedom. Freedom is one of the most terrifying things that we can encounter. So in this breakdown of society or this remaking of society that we're in the middle of, where it's kind of up for grabs, the old power players are trying to grab that power because they can't stand the freedom of reinvention. We're all kind of listing on a sailboat that's almost to the point of capsizing. And one of the most fragile things in that mix is the male narrative, the one we grew up with, the hero, the prince, the captain of industry, the knight in shining armor, the cowboy, the master tradesman, or that dad who can fix anything. We're really not taking a good look at what it's like to be a boy now. We don't have a specific way to be a boy. And so they're turning inward, they're turning to radicalization, or just loneliness and despair. We have these men out there, looks maxing, critiquing their jawline, critiquing their physique. A new kind of toxicity has entered the male culture. But being a boy is about new things, about being respectful of yourself and of women. So to recap, my first phase with men was adoration, infatuation, wanting love and attention. And phase two was experimenting with different relationships and roles, bouncing between asserting my strength of personality and being more demure and passive, unable to understand which tack to take, and also realizing that they're both me. I can be both demure, be taken care of. And there's also the part of me that can push through the doorway first and not like to be told what to do. And I hate being mansplained to. Both of those things do coexist. And I believe men also have those two elements coexist. I've been with many men who cried and had deep, raw feelings and expressed those feelings. That should be part of the male identity. But what came next for me was frustration, disillusionment, and sadness. Sadness when I really realized that there ain't no man on a white horse, that men, just like women, just like all people, can be disappointing. I had to reimagine what the world would be for me without a partner. I didn't even think of it that way at that point. I just started to notice that my joy really came from being with my family and being empowered. And it really did not come from being with a man. So that brings me to the third phase, acceptance. Maybe a little numbness. It's a lot like the stages of grief, this illusion of masculine protection. The numbness is the part that I have to work on. The hiding and the aggression is the stuff that men have to work on. We see what's happening in the White House. I think everyone knows deep down that these people are completely out of their depth. They don't know what they're doing. They are doing something. They're dismantling the entire government. They're dismantling democracy. Not with a scalpel, but with a sledgehammer. They're all little boys. They're all just little boys up there. This might be that rock bottom that we need, watching these men and boys looking at that and going, that's not the kind of man I want to be. I think that's what happened to us as women with the princess being rescued by the prince. We said, is that really who I am and what I want to be? I want more freedom than that. And maybe men will realize the same thing, that they don't want to be that kind of man. And they will break free from the hold of this algorithm that is taking us down such a weird, bad path. Because men need women and women need men. We all want love and we all want partnership. And we are all frustrated. We need each other. And we need to find a way back to ourselves, to each other, in a new way, in a new era. Let's hope for the best. You've been listening to Actual People. This show is written, directed, and executive produced by me, your host, Chauncey Zalkin. Show sound designed by Eric Aaron. Click on the link below to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And don't forget to leave a review. I'll be sharing my favorites. You can find our socials and all links to deeper dives into these topics at chaunceyzalkin.com and on my Substack at chaunceyzalkin.substack.com. Actual People is available wherever you get your podcasts.